Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Welcome, survivors. This is Eerie Knight of the Pseudoposse, and today we're going to do a deep dive into melee horde-based designs. Having trouble landing a hit through your chosen block? What is the best shape for the weapon you are using? How do you design a path around your chosen block choices? We'll answer all these questions and more throughout the video. Today's discussion will be broken into two sections. First section will cover 5 usable defensive fighting positions that you can melee through, each having its pros and cons. The second section will focus on best ways to construct a zombie path to your fighting position, which can vary depending on your chosen barricade. Let's dive in. Within the first section, I will grade each of the 5 fighting positions based on the following factors. How well do the shapes block cop spit? How well do the shapes block the plague spitter's insect swarm? How well do the shapes block the frost claw's boulder? Can zombies squeeze through the shape? And if so, what can be done to mitigate it? Showcase each melee archetype fighting through the design and making judgment on the ease of zombie hits, headshots, and the frequency of accidentally hitting your own blocks. I will preface the tests stating that while certain tests, like how well does X shape block Y projectile, is objective fact, other tests, like ease of hitting zombies through blocks, is more of a feeling, more art than science, which will vary from person to person. So take that part with a grain of salt. If something doesn't feel good for me, it could very well for you. So I recommend trying all these setups regardless of how well I think a weapon feels, to ensure you find the design that works best for you. And here is our grading rubric. And let's keep it simple, shall we? Pass, fail, and meh, which lies somewhere in the middle of the two. With all of that out of the way, here is our first design, the centerpiece of which uses the cube half-thin window arch. Not that it matters much, but aesthetically, I think it looks among the cleanest of the options showcased today. But how well does it function? Against cops, it performs admirably. After multiple tests, it reliably stopped all cop spit at a distance and close range. Moving around, forcing the cops to spit at different angles produced the same exact result. No vomit passing through. So this shape, blocking cop spit, gets a passing grade. Next up, the plague spitter. And no surprise, the swarm of insects is able to pass through the shape both at a distance and up close, which according to the rubric is a fail. The frost claw's boulder is blocked at range, but when close up and personal, it easily passes through, and so it can easily give this a meh grade. Now, given the zombie's newfound ability to crawl through sub 1 meter holes, the next test is the squeeze test. When multiple zombies are forced against the barricade, can one slip through and attack us? It looks rather sketchy, but after waiting a long time and adding additional zombies, it miraculously holds. Pass. Finally, we arrive at each weapon type. We've got spears, clubs, sledgehammers, knuckles, blades, and batons. The weapons across the board were pretty easy to hit zombies, but when it comes to larger zombies like the biker, getting headshots is a bit difficult while standing. Crouching helps hit those zombies where it counts, but the fact that you have to crouch isn't negative, as crouching during the horde while attacking can actually give you periodic sneak bonus damage, randomly. So it's actually wise to crouch if possible. The only issue I saw was that machetes were a bit difficult to reliably get hits on zombies, instead hitting the block itself. I'd give all weapon types a passing grade except for the machete, which is pretty meh. As for the variants, you can add scaffolding ladders behind the window arch shapes, which not only puts more hit points in the way of zombies to your delicious brains, but also works to block cop spit and deter squeezing in its own right. So if the outer block fails, you will sacrifice a bit of weapon hitability and make the machete even harder to land, but all in all, it's a good trade-off, especially if you're using any weapon but the machete. I also experimented with placing the cube half-thin window arch horizontally. It still had the same pass-fail meh grades for zombie projectiles, but in my opinion, landing the hits with all zombies was made harder, so I disliked this orientation. Feel free to disagree with that sentiment, give it a try yourselves. So here's the summary of the results. We'll leave that up for a few seconds and move on. Our next setup uses a similar block shape, the cube half-thin window. It lacks the arches of the previous shape and instead extends the gap all the way through the shape, giving it a larger opening. How will this affect the results? Let's find out. Amazingly, it doesn't lose any of its effectiveness against cop spit. Tried as I might, I couldn't get the vomit to pass in between the gap, thus earning its passing grade. The plague spitter, on the other hand, is still able to easily spawn insects that have no trouble flying inside to torment you. However, it becomes quickly apparent, even before the squeeze test, the spitter can shimmy through the gap and come inside to attack you. While the previous setup used scaffolds optionally, it is a definite requirement here, and once adding the scaffolds, nothing will slip inside. With that tweak, we can mark the plague spitter as a fail, since the swarm can enter, but the squeeze test is a pass, since the scaffolding ladder is a necessary part of this particular design. The Frostclaw also receives the same meh marks from the previous setup, as its boulder is stopped at a distance, but not at point blank range. Considering the gap is larger, all weapon types are pretty easy to land hits, even the machete. Not sure if that's just because I was more practiced as testing went on, or if it truly was easier, but to me, I feel like it was. As a result, every melee weapon gets a passing grade in my book. The third barricade on our agenda today is the scaffolding ladder itself, which has been a staple of fighting position defenses for several years. Let's see how it stacks up against the competition. First, a note on orientation. Scaffolding ladders placed sideways as shown here takes a bit more zombies than the cubed half-thin window, but ultimately smaller zombies can squeeze through, so this block in this orientation is not safe. It can be used in this orientation when used in combination with other block shapes as in the first two designs. Because of this, you'll need to use the scaffolding ladder in its upright position in order to use the shape solo. In this orientation, the squeeze test passes, but the spitter test still fails as the swarm is just unstoppable. The frost claw also yields the same results as the previous designs. Meh. However, the real interesting result is with cop spit. At range, the green stuff is reliably stopped by the scaffolds. However, when the distance is closed, there is a fair chance the spit can pass through, depending on the angle, especially if it flies through the center of the opening. A perfectly placed shot will make it through. The scaffolding ladder's glory days are far behind us, with the shape seemingly having received a decent nerf here. Thus, I must sadly report the grade as meh. However, that is potentially countered by the fact that this shape, when used solo, provides arguably one of the best melee experiences, as every weapon is quite easy to land hits with. Hitting the block itself is not really an issue with proper positioning, and all weapon types are a breeze to use with this shape, earning itself a passing marks on all melee weapons. This shape will work with any character build, no problem. However, in all of my testing, I couldn't find an additional block to add for more hit points and utility that didn't sacrifice the ease of hitting by a wide margin. And by utility, I mean blocking cop spit, preventing squeezing, etc. If you use a shape that does none of those things, it is rather meaningless, as once the scaffold is destroyed, zombies can easily crawl through the other shape. This next setup is a bit unorthodox, but if you're looking for something that maybe isn't the best option, but is definitely different, may I present the arch window empty. It has similar weaknesses to the scaffolding ladder as far as projectiles are concerned. Cops are meh, with the occasional spit coming through at close range. Distance is okay. Spitters are an automatic fail, sensing a theme here yet, folks? And the Frostclaw, also meh for the same reasons as previous shapes. One little caveat with this shape, unlike others, is that since it is a window shape, only repairing it one tick beyond full health will, and I can't emphasize the air quotes enough here, repair the windowy part, the glass pane. Fortunately, either you or zombies can easily poke that window out. The only annoyance is if you have a paint job, it will reset it. Moving on to the squeeze test. The results are very good. It passes with flying colors, as all of the individual holes are too small for zombies to squeeze through. Landing hits with melee strikes is pretty easy across the board. I have to say the sledge was a bit trickier for me to land hits with compared to other shapes, so I'll give this one a meh grade. All other weapons pass for me. Now, similar to the scaffold, there really isn't another block shape to combo with this that can provide full utility on its own. However, the pull double isn't a terrible option, which could also be used with the scaffolding ladder in the previous previous setup. Sure, it doesn't block cop spit and the like, but the squeeze test is decent, only letting the occasional zombie slip by when your main block is destroyed. Perhaps enough time for you to replace that block, though you will sacrifice some hitability with your weapons for the added security. Our fifth and final setup, along with the scaffolding ladder, were one of the two barricades I used in the 1.0 update, and that would be the pull four-way. It suffers the same issue as the cube half-thin window and the scaffolding ladder rotated sideways, in that zombies can squeeze through fairly regularly when the shape is used solo. To improve the security of the setup, add the ramp 6m 04 shape on the bottom, optionally add another shape like the ramp 6m 03 shape in front to make the player movement smoother. On top, rotate ramp 6m 05 shapes such that the widest part is up against the pull four-way. Now initiate squeeze. The setup holds pretty damn well for a long time until one burnt does slip through. It doesn't happen often, but a smaller size zombie can rarely squeeze inside. Since we are grading things relative to past tests, considering all passes have completely held up, I have no choice but to give this a meh. Now, the cop test. This shape holds really well against cop spit, but not as reliable as the first two setups. It is definitely more reliable than the scaffolding ladder and the arch window empty by a country mile, but since we have a simple grading rubric, I will give this the same meh score as well. Now, for those that saw the previous Plague Spitter and Frostclaw video, that the swarm of insects can freely fly inside, just like every other shape. So, fail. But I also made the claim last time that the Frostclaw could not throw a boulder through the pull four-way at close range. Who really confirmed this. I spent a much longer time testing out the Yetis than other setups. And if the angle is just right, they can slip a boulder through. It is definitely much better than the other shapes, but not 100% impervious as I originally thought. That being said, I'll give it a passing grade as it performs much better than the other shapes. Now, it should be noted that as long as you stand close to your barricade, which you will be since you are meleeing, you'll also be within their melee range, and they won't actually pick up a boulder. However, unpredictable things can happen during a horde, so I think it is still worthwhile testing and showing. Finally, the last of the tests. How easy are melee strikes to land? With this setup, you are standing up a bit higher due to the ramp 6m 04 shapes on the floor. Thus, I can easily see some people not liking hitting downwards. Larger enemies are easier to hit, while zombies like Arlene are a bit more difficult. As long as your weapons have adequate reach, that isn't much of a problem. This makes the knuckles tricky to use with this design, as the short range makes zombies difficult to hit. Not that you are really hitting the barricade itself, more that they are just out of range sometimes, and you have to get super close that you can get hit by zombies during the attempt. Thus, all weapons get a passing grade except for the knuckles. And there we have it. Here's the full summary of all 5 setups. Again, the ease of hitting zombies is going to be personal preference, so some of you out there will definitely disagree with my assessments on certain weapons, which is fair enough. So, how do we interpret all of these results? Lots of the meh or failed grades can be mitigated or completely negated by the zombie pathing design leading to the fighting position, as well as breaking line of sight when it comes to projectiles. It all boils down to how you use your barricades in the overall design of your base. Now we've reached section 2. How can we use what we've learned from the first section to make a simple melee base zombie pathing loop? During the various squeeze tests and hit tests, I mentioned the need for some additional shapes to prevent squeezing or simply to add more hit points between you and the zombies. All of this added security is especially useful if you are creating a base with no zombie dropper, no cheese paths. For those desiring this type of setup, you don't need anything fancy. A simple cube block pathway will suffice. But if using this type of path, I'd recommend using weapons with knockback or stun like the sledgehammer, club, or stun baton with repulsor mod. The more narrow you make this path, the easier it will be to knock zombies off to repeat the loop. You can go from 2 blocks wide to 1 block wide, or try narrower shapes like the cube halves or even pillar 0.5 meter. The more narrow the block, the easier it will be, but that might approach cheese territory for some of you more lactose intolerant players. Regardless of which block shape you choose, this type of base will take more damage to the barricades, hence the necessity of using the barricade setups having 2 block layers. This next design is a zombie dropper, but in my opinion, this is one of the less less cheesy droppers in that it doesn't have all of the floating blocks, which you'll see soon enough. You can use the pull 4-ways 2 blocks wide as the pathing shape, and ramp 8-meter O4 shapes top and bottom in blue to force zombies over the large holes. On top, you can directly put spikes up above or spikes on top of another shape like the railing corner. This can be useful for helping with spitters spawning insects at a range. Since I've had questions in the past for how to tweak this dropper to accommodate more players, I've decided to show a tweaked design from what I normally use playing solo. Here, instead of immediately placing the pillar 0.025 meter half-side centered at the ends, place a row of more pull 4-ways equal to the length of your barricade and the pillar shapes out front. This path works really well in preventing zombie squeeze issue, as the pull 4-way will occasionally drop zombies before they reach you, thus reducing their numbers, and once they reach the end, you can easily knock them off or they'll drop between the pillars. As such, you don't need double layer blocks and the added hit points for protection, as zombies won't accumulate in such numbers as to break through or squeeze through. Thus, the solo scaffolding design would also work really well with this dropper. If you'd like less zombies to drop at the barricade, swap out the short, narrow pillars for the pillar 0.05 meter middle. It will still allow zombies to drop, but less frequently to get some more melee swings in. Our next path is a bit more cheesy, but works really well with a melee design. Simply place plate quarter triangles or any other gap shape, as I mentioned in our recent block shapes video for the 2.0 update. Maximize the gap in between and on top, place the door trim 3-sided. This shape will force zombies to jump and fall through the holes. Larger zombies will be less likely to fall and make it to you for melee. It is rather a simple design, but highly effective. A friend and I literally just used this design for a day 35 horde. This type of design can easily be built from a POI and works great in a pinch. If you want to opt for uber cheese, look no further than this monstrosity. Look very close. It is difficult to see. Say hello to the anemic pillar 0.0125 meter centered. When placed vertically, zombies, for some reason, see this as a path. They can run fast enough to make it across, but some zombies will drop, thus preventing you from getting overwhelmed. And you can easily knock zombies off and repeat. With any type of zombie dropper, you can use single block layer setups, though feel free to mix any combination of setups with zombie paths. Each of the 5 designs I showcased have different build area requirements. The first few designs don't need a lot of space, but the window arch and the pull 4-way especially needs plenty of room, which won't work well in a compact design. Take this early game ladder design, for example. I recently used this design in a recent stream on the day 28 horde in the snow biome with higher game stage built with cobblestone, and it worked like a charm. The premise is simple. Zombies climb, reach your chosen barricade, and drop. Plenty of melee action and very compact. I did discover that zombies climbing from below can actually slip through the cube half-thin window arch, so you need to use the variant I went over with the scaffolding block used in combination. But the solo scaffold truly shines here in its upright orientation. If you take anything away from this video, your barricade design is going to heavily depend on the zombie path you construct. If you are opting for less of a cheese path, you'll need double layers. Otherwise, lots of the meh and fail grades can be overcome with a bit more cheese. Ultimately, it is up to you guys how all the setups feel in action, so give them all a try. Hope you all enjoyed the video and learned something new. Next series of videos, I am planning on base builds, using what I've tested in the past few videos. If any of you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see in the future, please share it in the comment section. And before you head on out, please give the video a like, as that supports us more than anything by making the YouTube algorithm happy. Also consider subscribing and tapping the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on the next video. As always, Taco and I extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our wonderful Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much. On that note, this is Eerie Knight signing off. See you all in the next video.